Good evening. It is Tuesday, July 16th, 2024, and we are here for two meetings of the Athens Clarke County Commission, myself, Mayor Kelly Gertz. We will have a brief special called session, and that will be followed by our regularly scheduled agenda setting session tonight. And so I'm going to begin by asking the acting clerk to call roll for us.
Davenport.
Here.
Link. Here. Taylor. Here. Wright.
Present.
Fisher.
Here.
Poole.
Here.
Culpepper.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Thornton.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. And we'll begin, as we always do, with our civility pledge that's been provided to us by the Georgia Municipal Association. And this indicates that the way we govern ourselves is often as important as the positions we take. Our collective decisions will be better when differing views have had the opportunity to be fully vetted and considered. All people have the right to be treated with respect, courtesy, and openness, and we value all input. We do commit to conduct ourselves at all times with civility and courtesy to each other. We, of course, have several items of new business in front of us, which is why we have a special called session. It's sometimes the case that we need to move expeditiously around contracting or other elements. But with these special called sessions, as with the agenda setting session, we do take public input. And now it's time for public input on our special called session items. Terms of public input provide the members of the public with a 3-minute opportunity. You do see a light in front of Acting Clerk Armstrong, and there is a green light that will turn on when you begin speaking. A yellow light will show when you have 30 seconds remaining, and then it will turn red when your 3 minutes has expired. And I will thank you for your time with us tonight. So is there any member of the public who would like to speak to any of the items on our special called session? And if you would just state your name and place of residence for the record as you begin speaking.
Will do. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My name is Willie Green. My address is 280 Commerce Boulevard here in Athens, Georgia. I'm speaking on item agenda, it looks like 5, TSPLOST 2020, Project 17, the Beech Haven Park, as relates specifically to providing public parking or recreation facilities in Athens. One of the things, as you know, Mr. Mayor, members of this commission, that I've submitted proposals, unsolicited proposals for support for SPLOST funding to continue to expand my Athens sports arena for youth development. There's two major questions from my understanding, based on speaking with the attorney for the city, as to whether or not I, as a private business owner, qualify. So I wanted to address a couple of two legislative issues or state laws. First of all, the Public-Private Partnership Infrastructure Act allows this body to provide partnerships, infrastructure dollars for the development of the west side of a community center, recreation center. Now, one of the things that the response back from the city attorney is that the Athens Clarke County has not adopted such a guideline, so it is prohibited from even accepting unsolicited proposals under this section. But if you go and look at the Public-Private Partnership Act, it specifically states that the local government is required to adopt and make policy. Required. It's not an option. So over the last 3 years, 2022, 2023, 2024, I have submitted proposals, and yet you have violated the law in requiring to adopt and make policies in order for these guidelines, in order for this to happen. And you can check, again, this is in the Public-Private Partnership Act, as it relates to the gratuitous clause that the Constitution, and it's saying that the county attorney is saying that you're prohibited from providing private funding for gratuity. If you look at the common sense of the Public-Private Partnership Act, it was designed for a private industry to partner with local government to build, construct, operate, and maintain a public facility. Now, what purpose it is to have to maintain and build a public facility if you don't own the land? So you have to look at the intent of the General Assembly. As it relates to the gratuitous clause, here's what it states. That Georgia allows a private property to be funded by a local government if it could show, quote, a great public benefit or a substantial benefit. And I can cite cases, I have receipts. Georgia versus the trustee of the Southern Railroad. Here's what it said. It said that long as they provide it, if they could show a great public benefit. Here's other exceptions to,
Thank you, Mr. Green. I appreciate it very much.
that was 3 minutes?
That's correct.
May I ask for extension of time?
We don't do extensions during public input, but I do want to see if there is any other member of the public who is here to speak to us on any special called session
Would you like
item.
to relieve your time so we can continue?
We don't.
No, we don't extend time from other participants, but if there's anybody else, any other individual who would like to speak, now is that time. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to any of these 6 special called session items? All right, hearing none, we're going to come to discussion. Just state your name and place of residence for the record.
So the exception Mr. Green was speaking on is the instance where substantial benefits are received in return. And he got the policy written in here as the West Border Commission, Hall County, Georgia, General Assembly 70 through 28. He also got purely charitable purposes as defined in the RS code include these things in advance in the region, relief to the poor, Georgia Constitute article in general, public welfare. It's like stating the unemployment for the free country hospital care for the poor authority to make charitable contributing to specifically granted an assembly and general statute. So let me just go ahead, let's speak outside of it because I can barely see it. To speak outside of this, I done been to his organization, right? I done been to his establishment. And when I see thousands of kids at his facility, all enjoying themselves with parents from all over the state of Georgia coming there, it's clearly that we need that for our community. Why he keep getting denied, I have no idea, but we need to make this happen for our community. We said we got a problem with kids, right? We got kids that's dying, we got kids that's getting hurt constantly. And this man got the remedy. And for him to fight for it for so long and don't get no type of support, it's kind of amazing to not only me, but to the community. And some of you guys here, I know a lot of y'all don't go out in the community, y'all don't see these things, but some of y'all actually done been to his facility with your kid. And you know this man do an awesome job with these kids. So we need to try to allocate something to help. I mean, you got the Boys and Girls Club and other organizations doing stuff, but this is huge. I was there this weekend, and let me tell you something. I seen so much happiness flowing throughout. No police is involved, no weapons there. It was awesome. So we need this for our community. We need this for our youth. And he ain't had no problem whatsoever helping every kid that came. I've watched this. That man took his own personal money to go buy these kids snacks, food. I see the coaches mentoring kids on the sideline waiting for the back. It's just an awesome thing. So why we would not support this? So I want to speak in reference to helping him get supported for that, man, because we need it for we really need this for our community, man, because our kids are hurting, and they getting hurt every day. We need this bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Is there any other member of the public who would like to speak to any item on the special called session agenda this evening? All right, we're going to go to the first item. This is the TSPLOST 2026 program. These are the proposed program goals, project selection criteria, implementation schedule, and advisory committee charge. We've got obviously quite a road ahead before the public referendum on this will happen, but this formally kicks this process off, and I want to turn it over to Assistant Manager Jones.
Thank you, sir. So I think it's an appropriate time at this point to introduce our new Capital Projects Director, Josh Hawkins. So Josh comes to us by way of Oglethorpe County. So Mr. Hawkins, would you mind saying a few words and maybe introduce yourself a little bit further?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name's Josh Hawkins, and I'm your new Capital Projects Director. I'm proud to be here. Grateful to Manager Jones for the opportunity. I've been on the job for a month. The ACC Gov team has been very welcoming and supportive to me. And as somebody who was born here in Athens at St. Mary's Hospital, I look forward to serving you and the manager's office for a very long time. That's just a brief introduction. Look forward to getting to know each one of you and serving in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Josh.
Just real quick about TSPLOST, certainly happy to answer any questions. We have Josh and Keith here to answer some questions if I cannot. But tonight, of course, program goals, project selection criteria in front of you, along with the implementation schedule. Also, the charge for the advisory committee, and then also, we're asking each one of you to appoint 2 folks to this advisory committee. And, Keith has kind of beat it in my head that, this is a heavy lift for your appointees. A very heavy lift, so be very cognizant of that as you're appointing folks. And, I've heard several of you talk about the opportunities that come from serving on a committee like this. Some of you cut your teeth on serving committees like this, so I would ask that you think about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Entertain a motion from the body.
Do we need a motion to suspend the rules?
Thank
Move
you.
to suspend the rules?
Thank you for that motion to suspend the rules from Commissioner Houle. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Myers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you all. This is the first reading of these items, so that was essential. Commissioner Myers.
I'd like to make a motion to approve with a request for some clarification in the document that, so that it matches what was given to us in our work session. And I can explain that more.
I'll second that.
Okay. There's a second, so I'll explain it more. I was going to make a request to hold this until August for 2 weeks, but I am convinced that we can do this without doing that. And one is, when I reviewed the tasks that are listed as part of the agenda, there is not a task included for the actual solicitation of projects and the outreach on that, and then the education and technical support on that, though that's in the materials that we received at the work session. So I would like to approve it with the understanding that a task that represents that will be added in as task 3. Before the review, we have to solicit that, and this is the public document that's going out. And my second request, I don't know if it has to be included in here, is that we have till August 15th to get our appointments to the mayor.
So there's a motion on the floor, kind of with those 2 administrative modifications. And there's a second from Commissioner Link. Commissioner Link, any remarks before I kind of turn it over to staff?
Yeah, I want to agree with Commissioner Meyer's concerns. I think we've long made a practice of soliciting projects from the public. And the public expects that. So I think that we really need to make sure that opportunity is baked in here.
And just kind of following up on that, is there anything, Keith or Nikki, you want to kind of mention about those elements?
Well, Keith, I know you're extremely familiar with this process, and does this request change the process at all? If it does, could you explain it?
No, it doesn't. We had intended for a 90-day submission window, which is what we started. We used to do 30 days, and at the request of commission changed it to 90. And I think TSPLOST, maybe 2020, it went to 90. So that was the intent. It's not specifically listed with that window, but we need the approval so we can get that ready to go out September 1st to get those projects submitted in that September 1st to December 1st window.
That's helpful. Commissioner Fisher, then Commissioner Thornton.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things I want to suggest, and I ran this by the mayor some weeks ago, I like the fact that we as a commission can appoint people. Actually, we asked for 2 people. I would like to recommend that each commissioner appoint 1 person, and then we do sort of look at other folk within the community, from our business community, our nonprofits, possibly our faith-based community, and get a little bit more diversity among our community, more so than us as commissioners appointing 2 from each one of us. So I would like to say maybe 1 from each commissioner, and then we find other people within the community that is going to impact businesses, nonprofits, and faith-based communities. So that's just a suggestion, Mayor. I'd like to put that out there on the table and see what my colleagues think about that.
Just functionally, one way we might achieve that is to just have something of a running list, and so, you might appoint a single person at first, everybody sees that, and then you realize, hey, I don't have anybody in Sector X. And so maybe just through kind of rich ongoing dialogue, I think we could achieve that. So, anything else before I kind of move to others? Okay, I've got Commissioner Thornton.
I didn't, I wish I had that idea, Commissioner Fisher. I think it's really a good one. And I think it's a good one because District 9, and you were very helpful with my TSPLOST meeting with my community. A year or two ago when we were doing, you met at Fowler and you met me at Coyle. And we came up with the TSPLOST bucket because of your help. And I really think this is a good idea because with the SPLOST project, I felt that it was not well represented by some folk with expertise. My district got very little out of the SPLOST project, and that's why I was so adamant about the TSPLOST project, and District 2 at that time. So we're talking about trying to be people who are dedicated, but also have expertise. I think the past SPLOST projects with 2 people, and it gets overwhelming when some people have an agenda already, and they get to be more influential, and it leaves a lot of the areas out of the mix. So saying that, I do support Commissioner Fisher's idea. Secondly, I have 2 TSPLOST folk for the past TSPLOST that have not been contacted. I talked to one of them today. They have been waiting to talk. So I'm wondering, I'm asked to get 2 more, and then my other 2 have not gotten any contact from your office. So I'd like to get that rectified before I give you another 2 names. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Got Commissioner Houle, then I see Commissioners Wright and Culpepper lined up as well.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm recalling from some of our discussions in recent retreats that we talked about wanting to pre-designate a certain amount of the funding toward infrastructure that we know we really need to fund through TSPLOST, so that the advisory committee has kind of a realistic amount of money in total to bear in mind for the projects that they're considering competing with each other. So not necessarily wanting to put a wrench in the timeline here, understanding the urgency and how well mapped out it is. I'm wondering what language staff might think would be sufficient to add in so that we could come back, before everybody's looking at proposals from the advisory committee, we could come back and consider approving, like pre-approving a certain list of things. So, we've talked about like stormwater and pavement have been 2 of the big ones, right? The neighborhood traffic management program, another one. So how would that look? Like if we wanted to approve this today, where could we build that in, or what kind of language would we add besides my meandering sort of description here?
At the mayor and commission's direction, we could certainly create buckets, whatever buckets you desire, to go ahead and signal to the community what we're looking for.
Well, so this wouldn't be creating buckets to signal the community. I think it would be saying like, we want to say X amount or X percent is not part of what the advisory committee would be considering. That we know we want to keep on reserve X amount of the money for stuff that the commission has identified as needs. Does that make sense?
Well, we have an estimated collection, and so if there's a consensus on the commission, whatever percentage you direct us to carve out, if you will, we can add that language in to signal. We still would need to signal to the residents what we're doing.
Okay.
And just logistically, would we then want to come to a work session, say August timeframe, and kind of have those kind of pre-designated areas? And you mentioned a couple of them. I certainly have a couple in mind as well. I think we behoove the whole community and the process, when we're clear. What we don't want to do is kind of have shifting sand over whether or not some of these things that we know as policymakers are distinct necessities for community health may not make it over the finish line. I think we do need to say from the outset, yes, we're going to do some stormwater. Yes, we're going to do a handful of these things.
Transit would be another one.
Yeah, transit
right?
operating similarly.
So yeah, like, do we need to include in our motion to approve a request for staff to bring this forward in the August work session or the September work session? What do you need there?
In addition to what you're approving tonight, some language saying exactly that, a very specific percentage carve-off for these things, where we can add that to our language and come to you in a work session and very specifically lay it out for you. So just to answer your question, add language to the approval.
Okay, so I guess I'll do my best to type up an idea here if the motioners are amenable to this being added. So it'll be a third condition in addition to Commissioner Myers' quote-unquote task 3 and the extension of our own deadline for appointees. Something to the effect of like directing staff to have a work session with us where we can identify the potential pre-approval of certain amount of funds. Yeah.
But those would still need to be voted on.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
And I have a follow-up if Commissioner Rule's not.
Yeah, I've got a couple, and then I'll get right to you. Commissioner Wright?
Was Culpepper ahead of me? I think?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing as Commissioner Huell. I think we need to, I'd like to see us focus on infrastructure and really things that we can use, do maybe fleet replacement also, that where we're not having to have that burden on the general budget. So things that we can use this for to be able to pull stuff out of the general budget so we don't keep increasing our general budget so much every year.
Yeah, to piggyback on some more of this conversation, or part of this conversation, first, because that was what we were just talking about. I think on page 12, where it talks about task number 2A, from today to December 1, I think that what we're talking about is in there. So while we're doing the public solicitation of proposals, we have our own version of that happening internally. I think it's listed here. We will solicit from the public and ACC departments suggested projects that will be consistent. So I think it's in here. So while that's happening, and then I think we've done this before, was the dollar amount assignment to the committee covers the amount that's left for whichever categories. This is part of the process that's in here, I think. And then, just hold on. I think that gives us our infrastructure and staff details with numbers. Obviously, the communities doesn't have the numbers so much yet, unless Keith works with his magic, and Josh, you'll learn about the fast magic for the math of the public projects. But I think that's in here. If you guys don't think that that's covered and it needs more specifics, but I thought that the agenda item mapped out the sort of thing we're talking about. With these additional comments on the motion. And then in reference to our 2 names coming forward from each person and then the mayor's appointees, did I hear that August 15th is our date certain for the names?
I believe so.
That's what's recommended in the motion.
That's what I'm suggesting, rather than August 1st.
Okay, because I didn't see it in here, but that's why you mentioned it.
That's why I
Okay,
mentioned
that's
it.
good, because this is, I believe, our first time assigning. I have a new district. We all have new districts. I could use some help with my 2. I think if we could work informally with each other and help each other possibly have a name, you could have somebody that you think is really good that could be in my district. I'd like to hear about it. There could be some expertise that we could be sharing with each other on people that we're connected with, or that was somebody in my district now that was in your district. There could be some. I think that we can do this without it being in the motion and changing the appointment process. And then another thing that I wanted to ask about is our previous appointments that were by district and the districts changed. That doesn't affect, right, the other appointees that were by district that now I might not have a District 4 representative if they got written out of my district.
Yes, so the ongoing oversight group is static. It's already fixed.
It gets to stay.
We don't need to
and
find
we
new
don't need
people.
Okay, all right, and that's good. And I think we have new challenges with the district changes for this opportunity, and I hope that we can work as a team and getting a good cross-section of the community and diversity in that. that was to piggyback on your comment. And I think that the other details, minus the August 15th timeline for us to develop these names, but I think that's a good idea.
Commissioner Hamby?
And I was just going to say, similar to what Commissioner Wright was talking about, I mean, I distinctly remember the list of projects that come from our staff and Transportation Public Works and whatnot. And at the end of the day, y'all, it's on us to choose what those projects are, just like we did last time. And maybe we should have taken a different approach last time, but I'm sure staff is going to turn in something that deals with paving. I'm sure they're going to turn in some that deals with stormwater and whatnot. So if we're going to go down the route of and this is only a 5-year SPLOST program, T-SPLOST program, unlike the 10-year T-SPLOST program. So if we're going to go down the route of pre-designating what we're going to spend the money on, we're not going to leave much for the community to weigh in on what they'd like to see happen. I mean, or at least give it some consideration in comparison with what staff turns in. So I'd caution us on doing that with a 5-year T-SPLOST program, because at the end of the day, we will see all the projects that get turned in, and if we don't agree with the recommendation of the Citizens Committee, we can certainly take a different approach.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, so I guess to clarify, hearing from Commissioner Wright and Hamby, you are correct that what's in here right now would match what's happened last time. And what happened last time is all those proposals from staff for things like pavement and transit were presented to the committee along with everything else that anyone from anywhere in the community presented. And it kind of left the committee having to determine whether they thought they should fund those things that we kind of know need to be funded by some portion of this. And so they ended up underfunding some of them, and then we turned around and changed that for our final vote. And I think that it made for a messier process that I think also left members of our oversight, or of our advisory committee, feeling confused leading up to it, and then maybe a bit confused, if not disrespected, after the fact, you know? So I think, like, if we know our budget has contemplated, for example, the one that we just passed, the FY25 budget, has contemplated a certain amount of money for transit to keep our transit department operating as it has been. We know that pavement's going to cost us a certain amount, and that unless we dramatically change how much we pull from general fund money, a big chunk of that has to come from T-SPLOST. So if we already know those things now, and then of course there's the stormwater thing we've been talking about, among others, right? In my mind, it's a clearer, fairer, more transparent, smoother process for us to just say, you know what, like, the advisory committee is going to look at all these proposals, some from staff that are smaller and more specific, and the ones that come from community, and that's going to apply to, say, 50 or 60% of the overall funding, but we're carving out, say, 40 or 50% to cover these things that we know we're just going to have to pay for with this, whether the advisory committee recommends it or not. So I feel like we've talked in our budget deliberations about how we've assumed that that we'd be paying for some of these things with T-SPLOST, and we've talked about it in our retreats, and we've talked about the upcoming T-SPLOST, how we should maybe do it differently this time. And so I'm just asking us to do it differently, but do it, you know, out in the open, transparently, discuss it in a work session, and go through the approval process this fall to just make everything smoother in 2025.
I'm going to turn to Commissioner Thornton, who we haven't heard from, and then Commissioner Myers again.
I do agree with Commissioner Hull. The last T-SPLOST decision was messy. If my colleagues remember, I actually walked out because my district was not getting the votes from the advisory committee that they needed. And we changed the process right on the floor. And that's when it got messy. I think if there are some things that when we appoint these folk on this, to serve on this tedious job of T-SPLOST, they go in knowing very little about what is going on in all of the districts. They go in there like newbies. They don't know. We have to give them some clear guidelines so they can work with integrity. The worst thing that happened with my abruptness the last time, I think I offended some of the advisory committee members because it was like I didn't appreciate their work. But it was because my district pays the same penny that everybody else pays, and they were not getting anything for their penny. So, I mean, this might seem a little trivial to some of you, but that money that we got, I had to fight for it, and I should not have had to do that. I understand that they even played the video that I actually went off on to the committee. I'm not trying to make the committee feel bad. If we give them clear direction, we are being transparent and equitable. Now, the other thing I was going to say is the former manager gave me a list of all the infrastructure needs in my district, and he didn't think we could have it for this meeting tonight. I think every commissioner should get a copy of I don't know how he did it. Sarah, you know, but I got it. And that will let you even know some of the infrastructure needs that you may not be aware of that could just go as part of a package to the TSPLOST committee. Let's give them some information. We send them in there, and I'm sure you do a good oversight with the candidates. But for a tedious job like this, we need people prepared to make objective decisions, not just for their little agenda.
Commissioner, I need to move on to some others. Commissioner
Yes,
Myers.
sir.
I agree that we need to be straightforward from the beginning with the TSPLOST committee and about the amount of money that we want to designate to ongoing infrastructure projects. Having served on 2 of these committees and having listened to other committees, the same discussion goes on again and again, that the S in special means it's a special project that is not one of the projects that you do every year. It is a special project. And I can't remember who, maybe it was the other John Culpepper, the finance director, who did a very good job when I was on the SPLOST, who was like, listen, according to state rules, that S stands for this is a special tax that we vote on, not a special project. And I'm always like wanting to say that again when I'm listening to these videos, because that discussion happens every time. The general budget should be paying for the transit. The general budget should be paying for all the pavement. If we, from our experience, as hopefully more of the newbies now, know that these are ongoing expenses that we want to use some of the TSPLOST money for, it would be more respectful to the people who are serving on this committee to help them and give them a smaller pot to work with. I do want to caution us, though, because I know another discussion comes up about, how much money is left and how many projects there are in each district and such. If we take 40 or 50% and have it for infrastructure needs identified by the staff, that leaves less money for these other projects that might be identified, and they might not be represented in every district in the county.
Okay. Commissioners Hamby and Houle.
Sure, and I'll just make another quick point, Mayor. And if you look at the current list of TSPLOST, and all I'm arguing is just like let's don't bind ourselves or bind the committee to something just yet. I mean, at the end of the day, let's see what projects come forward and see what the community wants to support. And there's an easy way to do this, and that's when they see the transportation and public works projects come before them and have them express how important it is to have these projects funded. I will say this, when you go looking through the projects, y'all, there were probably, Keith may correct me on this, but it looks like for infrastructure stuff we're talking about, a good portion of that, I don't know what the percentage is, but there's $17 million still sitting unexpended for paving. There's money in here in the current list for electrify the fleet program. still got $8 million left in it. And that's, I'm sure all these have probably changed for a little bit here, but this is the latest expenditure report. Bicycle and pedestrian improvements, there's still $7 million left in that. I mean, you see where I'm going. The committee came up with decisions to help us with infrastructure things. They didn't, and if we're going to go the direction it sounds like we're going in, I mean, there's, at the end of the day, it's a lot of money, but it's a 5-year program goes by awfully quick. So if we're going to go the direction we're going in, why bother with a committee? Let's just decide it on our own and go from there. So that's what I'm saying. Let's have a little confidence in what the community's telling us and what the committee's saying. And if we don't like the recommendations, at the time it comes to us to vote on it, we can change it.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. So noting that when we went through this last time, we ended up having to move many tens of millions of dollars, maybe $100 million around from what was recommended to cover those major things that Commissioner Hamby listed, and also transit, and still ended up with some of those things underfunded. So I'm going to offer this language. If the motioner is inclined to include it in her original motion, great. Otherwise, I'll offer it as a motion to amend. But direct staff to bring a proposal to the mayor and commission at a work session in time for a vote to consider by November 2024. And I identified that date because if you look at their timeline, the committee starts meeting in December. A pre-designation of a certain percentage and/or dollar figure of the total TSPLOST 2026 program budget for capital projects the mayor and commission and staff have already identified as necessary major projects requiring funding from TSPLOST. Elements of the proposal shall include, but are not limited to, pavement maintenance, public transit funding, stormwater infrastructure, and the residential traffic management program.
Could you add sewage in there?
Add sewer?
You can't spend T-SPLOST on sewer.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
But stormwater's in there.
Stormwater would be good.
And so,
I
kind of,
accept
I guess the process question is, will the motioner and seconder sort of accept that as additional language for the motion on the floor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other observation a member of the body would like to make before we call for a vote? All right, I've got a motion and a second on the floor, just in terms of kind of the high-level overview of some amendments. Kind of, you've heard this process for some pre-designated projects. You've heard that we will have until August 15th, and then, of course, we'll have a work session. So,
Just let me make one point clear, Mayor. Even if there are pre-designated projects, we can still change them when it comes back to vote for us.
That's right.
Of
course.
Yeah, you can.
So I don't want to,
Yeah.
I think this is, I know we can, but I do think that we, this process has worked well for us in the past, served us well in the past, and I'm not sure why we need to limit what's going on here. Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. All right, motioners, Commissioner Myers, and we'll begin roll call with her.
Myers,
Yes.
Thornton,
Yes.
Hamby,
No.
Davenport,
Yes.
Link,
Yes.
Taylor,
Yes.
Wright,
Nope.
Fisher,
Yes.
Poole,
Yes.
Culpepper.
Yes.
We got 8 yes, 2 no.
All right, motion carries. Moving on to item 2, this is the School Resource Officer Agreement for the 2024-25 academic year, and this is a recurrent intergovernmental agreement that we do every year. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, got a motion from Commissioner Wright and a second from Commissioner Fisher.
Mr. Mayor, ready to vote.
All right, any further remarks from the body? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, motion carries. All right, item 3 is a change order to the calendar year 24 pavement maintenance program project contract. Entertain a motion regarding this item.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Thornton. I've got a second from Commissioner Myers. Commissioner Thornton, any observations
No
about this?
comment. I mean, no.
No, I'm ready to vote.
I'm ready to vote.
Anything else from members of the body? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, item 4 is the TSPLOST 2023, Project 23, Greenway Trail Safety Improvements Construction Contract Award. You can see the project, sub-projects that would be part of this in the agenda items. Is there a motion regarding this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Myers, second from Commissioner Thornton. Commissioner Myers, any remarks?
No.
Commissioner Thornton?
No remarks.
Any others from member of the body? Commissioner Hool?
I just want to clarify, because we got some comments on this. This is specifically to approve the emergency repair in Beech Haven, and that's what this is about, right?
It's Greenway now.
This is,
Are we on 5?
No, we're
Oh, we're on 4. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
yeah. It's all right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, now to the emergency repair. Does anyone like to make a motion regarding the emergency repair at Beech Haven?
Motion to approve with that
Second,
request.
second.
All right, so I've got a motion from Commissioner Hool, second from Commissioner Fisher, whose district's very close to here. Any remarks, Commissioner Hool?
Just that thing, can we clarify what I just said before? This is the emergency repair, right? Just so everybody who's
Just to
present
ratify.
understands what this is about. Yeah.
All right. Anything further? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, item 6 is the Avail Technologies Support and Licensure Agreement. Is there a motion regarding this?
Motion to approve.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Davenport. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from second from Commissioner Taylor. Commissioner Davenport, any follow-up?
GDOT funds. I love it.
Commissioner Taylor?
What he said.
Any other remarks? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item 7 is a procedural matter. It's a resolution for authorized representative with regard to the Series 2022 and Series 2023 Classic Center Arena project bonds. Is there a motion to this effect?
So move.
All right. Got a
Second.
motion from Commissioner Link, second from Commissioner Myers. All right. Any remarks? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion 8 is that upon conclusion of our agenda-setting session, we'll enter into executive session to discuss pending litigation and potential settlement pursuant to O.C.G.A. 50-14-21 and O.C.G.A. 50-14-3B1A. In addition to confidential personnel matters pursuant to O.C.G.A. 50-14-3B2.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Wright. Who's the second?
Oviedo.
All right, second from Commissioner Thornton. All in favor, please say aye.
Should we add to that a motion to adjourn upon conclusion?
We'll do a vote kind of right after this. All in favor, please say aye to the executive session. Any opposed? All right, and then a motion to adjourn this special called session and adjourn our agenda-setting session upon conclusion of the executive session.
So moved.
So moved.
All right, I've got a motion from Commissioner Myers, and I have a second from Commissioner Fisher. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are moving now to our agenda-setting session, and of course, discuss the rules of public input. There are going to be several opportunities for public input tonight on our agenda-setting session. There will be an opportunity on consent agenda items, which on this agenda are 1 through 12. There will be separate opportunities on each of the planning and zoning items after we receive a report from our planning director. There will then be public input on old and new business. So I want to ask first, would any commissioner like to remove any item from consent? Any commissioner like to remove any item from consent?
Yep.
All right, we are winning, friends. All right, members of the public, is there anyone who would like to speak to any of the consent agenda items at this time? These are items 1 through 12. Would any member of the public like to speak to any of these items, 1 through 12? That 3-minute opportunity is yours. All right, seeing none, we are going to move to the planning and zoning items. So I am going to temporarily relocate. Planning Director Bruce Lonnie is going to come join us, and we are going to hear about a few projects.
This agenda is on the ACC particular agenda.
Thank you.
Bruce, I think we got a bumper crop tonight, 5 items in front of us from Planning Commission recommendations. And first one of those is 1215 Cleveland Road. So Bruce, I'll turn it over to you, and then we'll take public input on this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item up tonight is a special use permit request, SUP 2024-05-1029, for 1215 Cleveland Road. I'm going to say for the 5 items first before I move on. These are from the July Planning Commission meeting. Since the first Thursday in July was also July 4th, you'll see the date is June 27th, so I just don't want anybody to be confused. This is from the July Planning Commission meeting. All right, the request, as I said, is a special use. This is in the AR, Agricultural Residential Zone. It's an existing church, and what they're asking for is the ability to expand. They're looking to do a 2,564 square foot addition for classrooms and for some children areas, and as part of their request, they're asking for a variance. And that variance is to provide relief for the requirement of construction of public sidewalk. Instead, what they offered in their packet was an easement for a future sidewalk. If you're familiar with the property, it's in a very rural area. You have large lot residential development along this section of Cleveland Road. And we do have a standard that is countywide, but the context here is slightly different, hence the request for relief. For context, this church property is about 2 miles from Cleveland Road Elementary School. And walking to the schools, that kind of sidewalk infrastructure is the typical motivator for this. So it's at a good distance away from even the school. Here's an aerial view of the property showing you the existing campus. Here's the future land use, which is rural. And the zoning request is that special use to allow for the expansion. Here's a view of the property from Cleveland Road. And this is a view of the area where they propose to add the 2,500 square feet. Site plan showing the same. And architectural depiction of what they intend to do. Those 2 things would become binding upon approval if that's what happens. And the Planning Commission's recommendation is approval with a singular condition, and that condition was in relative scope with their request for the variance. Instead of an easement, what the Planning Commission recommended was that the owner dedicate future right-of-way to accommodate the multi-use path as depicted in the Greenway Network Plan, which is something that was anticipated in the Greenway Network Plan. And that concludes the staff report.
All right, thanks for that, Bruce. Is there anyone here to speak to this request? All right, seeing none, this is in Commissioner Hoole's district. Commissioner Hoole, any remarks regarding this?
I don't really have anything substantive at this time, but thus far, it seems to make sense to me. So if anyone out there is watching this and has questions or issues, including the applicant about that provision, then please get in touch with me. Otherwise, seems good to me. Go with the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Thanks, Commissioner. All right, we're moving on to item 14, and we'll get the staff report on this at 3105 and 3145 Barnett Shoals Road.
All right, that's correct. This is also a special use permit request. This one, 2024-05-1034. This is for the Athens Montessori School campus property. It is 2 parcels. They're asking for a special use in RS-25. And the purpose of the request is to replace an existing roughly 2,500 square foot former dwelling that has been used as a classroom for many, many years with a 4,900 square foot classroom building that would be purpose-built as a classroom structure. There were several prior reviews of this property and special use and conditional use approvals. Some of those conditions have been taking a while to complete. But this request has brought some of those back to their attention, and we are working on completing those. One of those is recombining the two parcels, which was a condition of approval from 2005. They're also proposing to close one of the 3 access points onto Barnett Shoals Road and to improve the parking facilities associated with the construction. Here's an aerial view of the 2 properties. This is across the street from the Milford Hills subdivision, just for reference. The future land use indicates that it's single-family residential, has been for several future land use maps. And the zoning map shows you the parcels and the special use designation. This is a depiction of the existing conditions of the 2 properties. And what you can see is that there are 3 driveway cuts onto Barnett Shoals right now, and then 1 to the north that served the former residents, and it's continued to be there. This is the proposed site plan. You'll note the difference in the size of the structure. They are offering to close the northernmost connection, Barnett Shoals Road driveway, and direct that flow outward to the north. Here's a view of the home. It's been a classroom. And here is a view of the structure that's proposed to be built, along with a floor plan that shows 4 classrooms inside. Planning Commission's recommendation is to approve with 2 conditions. First, that the combination plat be completed prior to obtaining any permits, and that actually is in process right now. And then the second, that the gravel portion of the driveway serving 3105 Barnett Shoals Road, which is where the home to be removed and the new structure to be added, that gravel area be paved and meet minimum specifications of the ACC Transportation and Public Works Department. The submittal that came in actually showed it to remain as gravel, and one of the standards that we typically require of schools and other institutional uses is to pave to commercial standards. So that was the second condition coming from the Planning Commission. And that concludes the staff report.
All right, thanks for that, Bruce. Is there anyone here to speak to this submission? All right, seeing no one, this is in District 1. Commissioner Davenport, any remarks regarding this?
Yeah, can't go wrong with expanding of churches and schools, so this is a good thing. I did watch the Planning Commission video for the, I don't know, I just got a question mark on my notes for the paved gravel. And, because that's private road, right, if I looked it up right? The little road that goes to the house, that's private. Or that,
The road on the north side, I believe it's Meadow View, I think,
Yeah.
is correct? It's public.
public, okay.
Yes, sir.
So this, the only condition is that the Planning Commission recommended just to have that paid for have that paved part of the development.
The driveway across the front of the new building had that paved.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And part of the reason for that, not to be onerous on the school, but if they are closing a driveway, they're putting more traffic across the front of that new building.
I get it.
And the maintenance of that gravel, it's just a lot of cars coming across there. The enrollment of the school is significant. And so it's not just the students in that building that'll be using, the drop-off across there. It'll be pretty much everybody at the school will be exiting out onto that residential street.
All right. That's it?
Any other remarks? All right, we're going to move on to the next project. This is item 15.
Okay. A number of addresses on this one, 5100 and 0 Atlanta Highway, as well as 2499 Cleveland Road. This is a planned development request, 2023-12-2459. One thing I want to note, the agenda that was available for tonight online listed 2495 Cleveland Road. That is a separate parcel. That address does exist, but it's a parcel that is not included with this PD. So 2499 is the correct address for that third parcel. The request is to rezone from the current Commercial General and RS8 to Commercial General and RS5, so going up a notch in density, but still single family, requiring a change in future land use from a mix of things, employment center, general business, and traditional neighborhood, to just general business and traditional neighborhood. The employment center future land use designation has been requested to come off. Purpose of this is to provide for a subdivision with 227 single-family homes, 198 of those being attached, 29 detached units, so a different format for the residential, with 1,100 square feet of commercial space. The commercial building would sit on the CG portion facing Atlanta Highway. The single-family residence would be a mix of alley-loaded and front-loaded lots, and those would be more to the north in the RS5 portion of the property. They did ask for 6 waivers to a handful of development regulations that are listed here. Essentially, what they're asking for here is the ability to have some flexibility with the arrangement of the units, because they do want to have some attached, which there are some rules with that in the RS zones, so they're asking for some lenience with that. They're asking for the ability to waive some of the standards for linear street frontage, maximum lot coverage, looking at front and rear setbacks to shift to allow for those buildings to cover more of the lots, to calculate the density on gross acreage instead of the adjusted tract acreage, which is a little bit of math that we have in the code that takes environmentally sensitive property off the top of the calculation before you run your numbers. They want to run the numbers off the total area of the property. And then the final waiver is to reduce the landscape buffer between the commercial parking lot and the street from a 15-foot to a 10-foot buffer. Here is an aerial view of the property. In the lower left-hand corner of the screen, you can see the Caterpillar plant, just for reference. So this is out on our western edge, close to Bogart. Here's the future land use, and you can see the large amount of employment future land use. That's the purple designation on there. That designation has been on the map for quite a while as we anticipated future growth spinning off from Caterpillar on the north side of Atlanta Highway. The applicant is asking for us to kind of respect maybe a shift in the market and open this up for residential development instead of employment. And here's the zoning request, from RS8 to RS5 PD. You'll notice the CG depth across the front is staying the same, but they are asking for the planned development to cover that as well. And here's a schematic of what they intend to do. You can see the attached units there in the center. There's some flexibility there with roadway alignments that they're looking for. You can see the alley-loaded lots. But it is a mix of unit type, and this is something that we have talked about a good bit in the community. So that's the proposal here that we have. One of the exhibits that was provided, and I don't know that you can make out the lot lines of the parcels to the east, faintly. This is showing where sewer connection is or could be available.
Is that the green line?
That's what the green lines are, that's correct. And what it's depicting is the distance at which a sewer connection, the closest it could be, and it's showing 3 scenarios, really. Presently, no public sewer is available to these tracks. So that's the takeaway from this particular slide. The potential is there, but presently, from our Public Utilities Department, there is no sanitary sewer available to this parcel. Here's some representative views of the architecture. So this would be the commercial. Here's the residential units, more traditional forms. All right, Planning Commission recommendation. For the future land use change, they recommended approval as proposed. For the rezone, they asked for an approval, but with a handful of conditions. And those conditions are as follows: that the street cross-sections in the plan be non-binding to allow staff to work through some of those details, particularly with fire and emergency services. That the tree locations shall also be non-binding to allow for some flexibility to move the tree locations with curb cuts and that type of thing. That all items in the code compliance section of the staff report that need to be addressed shall be addressed, or the project returned through the process for new waivers. Gravel shall be placed beneath the sidewalks in the public right-of-way. That's important in order to allow for the street tree growth. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough adequate soil for that. All grading and drainage, transportation, and fire comments, as listed in the staff report, shall also be met during the construction plans review phase. And then the sixth is that waiver requests 1 through 5, you remember from the second slide, those are granted. The waiver request number 6 regarding the buffer not be granted, and that was the reduction from 15 to 10. And that concludes the staff report.
Thanks, Bruce. Is there anyone here from the public to speak to this item? Again, just state your name and place of residence for the record.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Bates with SPG Planners and Engineers, and I live at 180 Homestead Drive. Originally, when we submitted the preliminary PD, we submitted with 220 townhomes and 150 multifamily units, plus the 11,000 square feet of commercial. At the Planning Commission meeting, we heard back from the Planning Department, we heard back from the Planning Commission that they would like us to explore eliminating the front-loaded townhomes. We had about 20% of our townhomes were front-loaded. After that Planning Commission meeting, we met with the neighbors, had a neighborhood meeting. Commissioner Houle attended that meeting. There were around 20 or so neighbors that attended. The biggest concern was, no surprise, was traffic. And there really is a traffic concern, and I'll discuss that in a minute, as well as the introduction of multifamily into this area. There just isn't any multifamily in the general vicinity here, and the neighbors had concerns with that multifamily. So we went back to the drawing board, and when we resubmitted this plan that you see here, we eliminated all the front-loaded townhomes, swapped those out for larger lots, single-family detached, more spacing with the driveways. You can put trees, landscaping in there, not as a harsh environment. And then we eliminated the multifamily, which invariably reduces the amount of traffic. So we significantly reduced the density. Matter of fact, our proposed density now is less than what would be allowed by right, to kind of accommodate some of the feedback we received. Now, traffic, as part of a PD, we perform traffic studies. This looks at the existing intersections, and there is some issues with the existing intersections. They grade these based on how long you have to wait at an intersection, from an A to an F. A is good, F poor. Old Cleveland Road has a score of a D, and Cleveland Road has a score of an E. Now, where our development is positioned, we won't be using either Old Cleveland Road or Cleveland Road very often. We're going to be using the traffic signal that's at Dover Drive, and very rarely, although we provided connections to Cleveland Road because we want to have as much connectivity as possible, our development won't be impacting these stop signs as they are. What we do provide, since all of these streets will be public streets, is an option for folks on Cleveland Road heading south, heading towards Atlanta Highway, and say they want to get to the loop. They could circulate through our property to get to now a traffic light that will be at Dozer Drive, so they can have a safer left-hand turn. We have been working to get easements, sewer easements, since November, and obtaining easements takes time. There are the two options for gravity, and the third option that was in that exhibit that's a little hard to read here would be a lift station. Now, we do not want a lift station. That is not our goal at all.
Mr. Bates, I appreciate it very much. Thanks.
I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the public who's here to speak to this proposal? All right, and this is in Commissioner Houle's District 6, so I'm going to turn to Commissioner Houle.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know whether to take it as a good sign or a bad sign that no one showed up to speak to this tonight. I have gotten a few emails about it. That town hall meeting was pretty spicy. But I do appreciate the developers hosting it and responding to the content that we discussed there with their revised proposal. In general, I'm inclined to support this. I do have a few questions for staff. I guess I'll mention them here. If there's any readily available easy answers, feel free to share them back, but otherwise we can discuss between now and the voting meeting. But the first two are kind of regarding the sewer line. I do like that it's required here. I will want to confirm with the attorney that that requirement as written is strong enough to make sure that they don't get to move forward without actually doing this. So just make sure that that wording's good. But I think this is actually a great opportunity to get sewer, gravity sewer, moved to an area that's currently only served by septics. And I guess I'm curious also if this clarifies that that's at the developer's expense with the way it's written, and like not that this has to be built and then they can petition the county to have to build it. And then the other question is it going to be built in such a way where nearby residents could tie into it? So one of the things that I think actually made a lot of the folks in the room feel a bit better, you know, a lot of times people aren't excited about a big development right near them, especially if they live in these more rural areas, but we are also right next to Atlanta Highway, the main corridor of the west side. But they're on septics, and many of them have septics that are aging or even failing, and so the promise of being able to tie into a sewer was actually, I think, really a positive for many of them, and I know would be a positive for others who didn't happen to be at that town hall. So I'd just be curious the specifics around that. So if you have anything about those right now, I'll take it. Otherwise, I'll just say the other couple questions and then shut up.
Real quickly, the sewer provision is kind of a de facto requirement. Without asking for relief for any other connection or any other provision, in order for this development to move forward as designed, it would need that public sewer connection. That would be at the developer's cost, as always. And as far as other connections for other properties, that would remain to be seen as to how that alignment ultimately comes together, whether or not other properties have reasonable access to that extension.
Okay. So thinking of, you know, this being a pretty substantial change, but I think a justified one for a lot of the reasons the applicant has spoken to tonight and in past nights, I'm inclined toward it. But if there's a way to provide that community benefit of making sure that, you know, others can tie into the sewer, I think that would be really, really good. So the other few things that I'll just throw out there now, I do want to, I've had a few residents reach out, kind of suspicious of whether the road that they're building will be able to accommodate the amount of traffic that we're anticipating would start using this better aligned intersection instead of, you know, going down the existing road. So just wanting to make sure that the road, as they're proposing to build it, will be able to handle that. And then I'm curious, staff's take on a traffic light versus a roundabout. Obviously, a roundabout costs a lot more, but if we're thinking on a intergenerational timeline here, you know, is this an opportunity for us to get the ball rolling on alleviating some of those issues there? I don't know how realistic that is, but I am curious. And then the last thing is you mentioned, somebody mentioned Old Cleveland Road. So that's not immediately adjacent to this, but this will have an impact on the folks who live there. They're already stuck with only one exit, and it's straight onto Atlanta Highway. And so trying to turn left there is a nightmare, but also trying to turn right and do a U-turn is a nightmare. So I am curious if there's anything we can attach to this that might improve their intersection. The most realistic thing to me would seem some kind of right turn where shortly thereafter they have a reasonable opportunity to do a U-turn, since a left out of there is already terrible and will only get worse. So, yeah. Any thoughts on those now? Otherwise, we can talk about it later.
Noting everything you're saying, and we'll share that with Transportation and Public Works staff to get their input prior to the voting session.
Thanks. Maybe we can meet and talk about what you learned from them. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Davenport?
I just got a quick question. Is this on the bus line? No, okay.
I believe so.
Thank you.
Currently, bus route 20 stops at the Georgia Square Mall, which is the furthest west transit line presently. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, this seems to be a really reasonable development as far as I can tell. I like the diversity of housing and then the green spaces scattered throughout and the idea that that intersection will be available. You know, we need to realize that how much growth is going on with the redevelopment of the mall, and this is going to be like, you know, a whole new bedroom community of Athens. So this kind of housing in that location is kind of what's needed. You know, we definitely need more single-family housing. We need, you know, this kind of modest single-family housing. So I'm certainly inclined to support it.
Commissioner Wright?
Can we go to the picture that shows the neighborhood, I guess the one that's aerial view? Yeah, that one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Back one.
Yeah.
There we go. So had read something about some concerns about the density, but am I hearing that they're building density by right in this projected project?
Well, they're proposing density that aligns with what RS5 would allow.
Okay.
And they don't have that now, they have RS8.
Okay, so they,
It's a little more than 70 units more
More.
than what current zoning would allow.
okay, so the existing, neighborhood over here to the bottom right, you see
You
that?
can't see my
How
cursor,
does
right?
it compare with the density that's already there? I guess now go to the colored one that shows us.
Okay,
That's Doublegate, I think, right?
yes.
Okay, so that would be the RS8 yellow, and they're moving to 5
Yeah, and
with the waivers.
I think even that existing development out there is not really RS8 density either. It is less dense than that. It's a subdivision, I believe, from the 70s, 80s.
Okay.
And it was done at a less density than even RS8.
Probably a previous zoning category.
Correct. From the county.
Yeah,
Yes.
understood. Oh, right.
That's right.
Gotcha. I hear what you're saying. I guess, and then and you're saying that they are required to do the connectivity to the sewer?
As requested, for them to serve this development, they would need to have access to the public sanitary sewer.
Okay.
And, right now it's not available, but it's my understanding, and I think we just had the comment now, that working with the neighboring property owner for easements to provide that access is presently what they're working on.
Right. And then the water source?
Yeah, same. And water capacity is not the issue as much as the sanitary sewer
Due to the
access.
gravity versus.
That's right.
And then I was introduced to step septic tank systems
Okay.
on my break. Is that something we allow in our community?
I don't know of any that we have permitted,
But
and I'm not really
we
sure
don't-
what
we
the
don't
health
have a
department.
barrier. We don't have a barrier against them, do they? Do we?
Septic systems are managed by the state through the health department.
Okay.
So our public utilities folks wouldn't have any involvement with
I'll
that.
have to take that up at the Board of Health. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, this is just a question, an ongoing question. If we have we have this development, the density in here, I'm glad to see there are 3 bedrooms, units here. Do we have an ongoing list of all the developments that have been approved? Like, some spreadsheet that with the kind of density that we have and how many bedrooms and?
We have been tracking those developments that have come through that have been approved, that have made it to plans review, that have made it to permit, and that have made it to CO. And so those 4 steps are very important before you actually somebody living in those
Right.
units. We have a table of that information. We focus mostly on multifamily because really until recently, our single-family development's been rather limited. But
In that chart, does it also include number of bedrooms so that we can see the, variety of bedrooms that we're approving?
and where they stand in the process?
Yeah. And not, obviously, we don't need this right now, but this is just making me think of it as we're looking at some other projects
Yeah.
coming forward as well.
No, we do. And like I say, with single-family development, it's been mostly infill that we've had. So we haven't really been including those in that tabular accounting. We've been looking at multifamily. But now that we're starting to get more of these proposals, I think we'll be incorporating that as well.
Right, and we have some on the east side.
That's right.
I guess, and, Bruce and Commissioner Myers, it occurs to me that if you're talking about single-family zones, you've got a lot of record, and you've certainly got the choice of whether you want to have a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom or a 5-bedroom home, unless it's a PED with a binding site plan. So that there probably is a little bit of flux in there around, the minimum and sort of maximum in those zones.
Yeah. When we've done that kind of estimating, we've assumed a 2-bedroom home, just to kind of come in at a comfortable level. But yeah, you're exactly right, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's,
And that would be just as important for the multifamily, rather than the single family, the combination of 1 studio, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms that we have as we're going forward and making decisions and awareness of what's going on with housing.
I'll just observe before we move on, obviously, we're very close to significant employment centers here, so I think this would be a welcome addition, and particularly the variety of housing type. Just as you look demographically across the country and certainly regionally, there are a lot of folks that don't want that front yard or backyard to have to maintain, that are very interested in a townhome product or something comparable.
It just went by transportation when I first saw this. So like, just hypothetical, let's say 30% of those individuals who live in this facility, in this area, they work at Caterpillar. They're gonna be 30% of people driving. So like, where do we begin that conversation to put a bus stop there and finally put a bus stop at Caterpillar?
I believe that transit development plan that we have underway may be a good point of departure for this conversation. Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that Commissioner Davenport raised that up, and I just wanted to make sure with this site plan, is the amount of future right-of-way that they leave on the frontage, if you can go to that slide. It's in our packets on, if you download the agenda item, it would be like page 17 of the agenda item, but
Yeah,
I don't know what that is on your slide.
I don't believe I have that depicted for the presentation.
There's like a site plan, the binding site plan mentions down bottom there.
Yeah.
If that's the same drawing that I've got, it mentions future right-of-way. Or maybe the applicant can speak to this, but is there room there for a transit stop to be built in with the amount of space they're leaving as is, or would we actually need to specify some kind of small amount of allocation to ensure that that can happen? Because I agree, that's an important thing to make sure we're prepared for.
Yeah, we had discussed this earlier, and it came up in the neighborhood meeting. Currently transit doesn't go out there, but we have a space outside the front of that commercial, imagining that transit would come down Atlanta Highway, they would turn right on Cleveland Road, and then kind of loop around to the commercial there. There is actually allocated a little space and labeled on the plan for future transit stop. And then they could go through the light and head back towards the
Okay,
north.
so they'd kind of do a right-in on Cleveland and then come back out to your light. So has that been run by our transit department? I guess I just want to make sure that what you all are doing, because I know we did talk about this at that town hall, that what you all are doing actually jives with what our staff would need in the future. So, do you know, Bruce or Nikki?
Transit has seen it, and I'm just double checking. I think they had no comment, because it was shown. I think that's as far as they went.
And would they have looked at the idea of the routing that they're talking about here?
Yeah, they would have looked through the flow through the site and seen it as a placeholder. Without service actually being here now, it probably doesn't rise high on their list for, reprogramming or thinking about routes. But, yeah, they've been typically pretty good about, does the flow make sense?
Okay.
Yeah.
Bruce, is there an opportunity for the transit department to update the staff report prior to
Absolutely.
August 6th?
Yep.
August 6th. TIA, was there a TIA on this as well?
Yes, and that, the level of service analysis was discussed at Planning Commission, and that's definitely still something that's being talked about with Transportation and Public Works.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Culpepper?
So they requested a 10-foot buffer waiver, and y'all denied that and made them stick with the 15-foot buffer. Will that affect the availability of the area for a transit stop?
In staff's opinion, we don't think so, but you may want to ask the applicant.
Does that make sense?
It won't affect.
Okay.
All right. All right, moving on to item 16.
All right. This is a rezone request for a number of parcels, number of addresses off of Danielsville Road, actually at the end of McClung, which right now is a kind of a commercial cul-de-sac on the west side of Highway 29. This is rezone 2024-04-0675. The request is to rezone from Commercial General and RS25 and AR to RM2, which is a mixed-density residential designation that allows 24 beds to the acre. This requires a future land use change from general business, single-family residential and rural, to mixed-density residential future land use. The purpose here is to allow for a project that is going to be a combined 34.73 acres for a new multifamily complex northwest of the Highway 72 and Highway 29 intersection. A lot of commercial development out there, and the residential is starting to come after that initial wave of commercial. It was noted that it has proximity to daily needs, job opportunities, has potential for future connections in and around this node of development, and the creek on the property that would contribute to potential Greenway network in the future. This is a non-binding concept plan. This is a straight rezone request, not a PD. Here's an aerial view of the project boundaries, somewhat irregularly shaped. This gives another view. That area of disturbance that you're seeing was some of the work that was done early on as the commercial was building out to allow for temporary detention ponds and things of that nature. This boundary line is really tough to see, but what is worth noting is McClung is that cul-de-sac that you see, unfortunately, underneath the labeling of all those addresses. And this area roughly aligns with where we have talked with a connection that would ultimately make its way over to Danielsville Road. Thank you. And so part of the discussion here, and you'll see it in the ultimate recommendation, is that that center roadway that's part of their design be something that is thought about as a future interconnection and building that roadway network to help you get from Voiles Road all the way to Danielsville. You'll notice it's picking up portions of the rural future land use pieces. Those are AR pieces by zoning. And so what you end up with is this polygon of land to be used for RM2 zoning. This is the view at the end of that McClung Road cul-de-sac looking into the heart of the property where that roadway connection would be proposed. And then here you see that layout. So 2 points of connection to McClung, and then as you follow the curves, the sort of sine curve of the roadway, there's the potential for some new connection. This looks like it's page north, but it would actually be sort of northeast to an alignment that would ultimately get you to some extension of that roadway that would take you over to the school, Harris. All right. So the Planning Commission's recommendation for future land use was approval as proposed, and the rezone request was approval with a condition. Then that condition was about that central roadway, that be dedicated as public right-of-way to allow for connection through the property from McClung Road to the rear of the project site for future right-of-way. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there anyone here to speak to the submission? Again, just provide your name and place of residence for the record.
I'm Justin Crichton with W&A Engineering. Our offices are located at 330 Oneida Street here in Athens. I'm happy to be here tonight to speak to this item. We feel like this is as staff noted, this is a straight rezone request, so it's a non-binding site plan, so it's a little different request than we're typically used to presenting. But we feel like it's an appropriate use for this property. It aligns with both the prevailing pattern of development over there, and I think that the change over to a multifamily use here is supported by like not only the prevailing development pattern, but also it can provide some support, some rooftops for the retail that's developed around there. In addition, it's also a good transition from the higher intensity commercial uses to the lower intensity single family uses that buffer the property or that are adjacent to the property. I'm happy to answer any questions, specific questions that anybody has, but I look forward to your recommendation of approval.
Thank you, Mr. Kreitman. Is there anyone else here to speak to this proposal? All right, seeing none, this is in Commission District 9, so I'll turn to Commissioner Thornton.
Thank you. I had mentioned to another developer at W&A, I wish we could have put a moratorium on rezoning until we got a complete picture of the future land use plan, because I just think that that's just my thought. I'm the main one advocating for housing. I'm not sure about this one, though. I'm struggling with the mixed density and non-binding, but I'll do my homework before next month, and hopefully you'll be available to answer some questions for me.
Commissioner Link?
I have a question about the condition. You know, the idea that this would be a future right-of-way, which makes total sense, and there's so much growth going on there, we definitely need some more connectivity. Should the language specify that it would enable a mixed-use path or some kind of bike ped facility along that roadway? I think that would be essential, considering all the residential and the commercial and the school, and I feel like that condition should specify that kind of infrastructure as well.
With dedication of public right-of-way, our typical street section is sidewalk both sides. It is not a typical section that would include bike facilities, so if that is something that you're interested in, that would need to be something additionally stated.
Yeah, perhaps Commissioner Thornton and I can talk about that. I mean, I just feel like,
Additionally stated.
I just feel like it's essential when you have a school and the idea that there will be connectivity to a school. You know, people are going to be walking, kids are going to be biking. It's essential that, you know, when we have a blank slate like this, we build that kind of off-road safe infrastructure in on the front end. Yeah, I mean,
And just kind of, and this might be helpful, Commissioner Link and everybody, just as you visualize kind of this area, that interconnection as it would potentially tee into Danielsville Road would be sort of north of the fire station, but south of the elementary school. So that it's kind of in that margin between those two public facilities, if you think about that. Commissioner Davenport?
Just something that just popped in my head Sunday when I was looking at this, and I talked to Commissioner Thornton. And I like the Planning Commission recommendation. Just when I think of cut-throughs, I think of speed, and I think like, could we make them just a suggestion of maybe putting in some traffic calming measures, because you know at the end result, 29 is a very busy road in Danielsville.
It's dangerous.
It's a very busy road, and you do a cut-through where people. Drivers are going to say that's cut through. You're going to add speed, and you got kids in school, blah blah. So I don't know how to proceed with making a suggestion of maybe putting in some speed bumps, but I guarantee you residents after 5 or 10 years are going to be recommending it.
It is one of those areas that definitely it needs the infrastructure, period. Lighting, pavements, putting this development in there and that infrastructure is not in place is not the best idea right now. But again, like I said, I really had not thought it through completely, so it's not a no for me. It's just a matter of taking in suggestions from my colleagues and meeting with you. And I did know about this project, but I wanted to be transparent and hear it openly. So let's plan to talk, and we'll see what we can work out.
All right, we're going to move on to item 17.
All right. It's a rezone request for 175 International Drive, zoning request 2024-05-1026. Request is to rezone from RM1 and RM2 to entirely RM2. This is acreage that is split between two tracts, and that number is incorrect, but what we have is a development, and you'll see this in a minute when we look at the aerial. When it was built, all of the density was moved to the western piece, and the eastern piece was left fallow. And so the ask here is to rezone the eastern, what became the eastern piece when International Drive was extended, and allow for some development. So the rezone of our existing RM1 property, which you'll see in a second, to RM2 will bring that property into compliance and leave some additional density available for new development on the eastern side of International Drive. So let's look at the map. So there's an aerial view of the property. You can see a little bit better than what I'm talking about. The reserve is on the west. Existing multifamily development has been there several years, and that was where all that density from all of the acreage was put when it was developed. And the piece to the east, which was all one piece at one point in time before the roadway was dedicated, has been left undeveloped and has some frontage on Dennis Drive, which is a rather small local public street. Looking at future land use, mixed density residential across the board. And the zoning, this depicts what I'm trying to explain. That you have RM1 presently on the west, RM2 on the east, but that RM2 has been sort of in name only. And so what they're asking for is the ability for the western portion that's already developed to be rezoned to RM2, and that will free up development potential on the eastern side. And just orienting you here, this is behind the Kroger development. It's nestled in with Polo Club, close to the YWCO, close to Research Drive. We have a lot of existing mixed-density residential out there already and a lot of good commercial. So the walkability of this area is pretty strong. Here's a view at the end of International Drive at that cul-de-sac. It's a bit of a supersized cul-de-sac, and that's because we do have a bus route there, and that's where the buses turn around. We have a lot of bus traffic, I believe both ACC transit as well as UGA transit. And then here's a proposed layout. Now, this is a straight rezone, so this is what they're proposing. On the west is actual existing development, and then on that eastern side is a concept that they've put together. And it shows that interconnection from Dennis Drive where you see that kind of rabbit ears coming off of a roundabout there at the end of where Dennis Drive's pavement ceases. And then you have an interconnecting road that makes its way out to the cul-de-sac at International Drive. And then this is just a bit of a close-up on that. There's a good bit of topo on the site. There are some creeks. That's what you see buffered in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. And then here's that section drawing on the other side along Dennis. All right, Planning Commission's recommendation is approval of the requested rezone with a condition. And that condition is that prior to consideration of the zoning request by the Mayor and Commission, the applicant would work to have a water and sewer capacity analysis coordinated with Public Utilities Department that shows that there's adequate utility capacity for this new development. We got verbal confirmation today that that capacity analysis has been completed and the Public Utilities has found it to be complete, but we will have that in writing to you prior to your voting session. And that is the end of staff report.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there anyone here to speak to this submission? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Frank Pittman. I live at 1400 Saxon Road in Watkinsville. I'm here representing the buyers of the property. As Bruce mentioned, this property is a little weird in that split zone of the road down the middle. The western side is RM1, the eastern side is RM2. The acreage actually shown on there was correct.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it was wrong at the Planning Commission.
Okay.
But what was shown on here is right. It's 29 and a half acres total. As Bruce mentioned, the western side was developed back in the early 90s. The old, 3-story robot-shaped apartments that everybody saw back then. Currently, 612 beds are on that property, which would be more than would be allowed under its RM1 zoning. So we are requesting to basically rezone that existing side to RM2 to match the eastern side, which would do a few things. It would clean up the split zoning. It would allow for up to 97 more beds to be built on that eastern side. By doing that, that would allow an interconnection, basically from College Station over to Barnett Shoals, which, is pretty by way of Dennis Drive and International, but would be a big benefit to a lot of those apartments that are on International. Where they are now, they don't have any, to go to Barnett Shoals, they've got to go all the way back around. So as a benefit there, there's also a benefit that my clients would be bringing Dennis Drive up to current standards. Right now, it's a dead-end street with no cul-de-sac, so they'd be putting a cul-de-sac on it. They'd be widening it. They'd be putting sidewalks along their frontage of Dennis Drive to make that a little bit better. Water and sewer is available, as Bruce mentioned. They've already issued a letter on that too, Bruce. I think they sent you guys a copy of that too. So there it is in writing at this point. With that, I'll mention too, we're proposing kind of a different housing type, and yes, this is not a binding plan, but my client is kind of bound by a restrictive covenant that the sellers are putting on the property where they can only do one-bedroom units because they've got 2, 3s, and 4s, and they don't want somebody competing with them. So we're proposing cottages with one-bedroom units, which is highly desired right now, especially on that side of town, with a lot of grad students, a lot of young professionals, and vet school students that are living over there. So with that, we'd obviously be open for any questions, and we'd ask for you guys' approval.
Thanks, Mr. Pittman. Is there anyone else here to speak to the submission?
Hi, I'm Charlie Hill, and I'm a developer and have the property under contract. And I was here actually last fall for a rezone at the corner of Research Drive and Barnett Shoals. We're very, very similar to RM2. And hopefully tomorrow we get our land disturbance permit. We'll be underway there. And so this property, I touted that as walkable. This is even more walkable. It is probably less than 250 feet from the Publix entrance. So most people think of the east side as a walkable environment, but this truly is. We live in the neighborhood. Oh, did I give my address? I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, we live at 4895 Barnett Shoals Road. We live in the neighborhood. We're in and about the neighborhood. I have no desire to build anything that I would ever be ashamed of, or any of the citizens would be. And so we'll do the same quality construction that we're about to get underway on these buildings as well. We are restricted to the one bedrooms by the owner, as long as it's a rental property. A good portion of the property can't be developed, as I think Frank mentioned, and as Bruce Lonnie mentioned. It's heavily treed. There are creeks down at the other end, so that will remain wooded, and we'd like to put trails through there and maybe park horse type thing. We'd like to do some new architecture here that's compatible, but maybe do something that's a little bit different than everything that's been done before. I think planning sees this corridor. I think they mentioned to me, I don't want to speak for them, but as a higher density area in the future land use plan. And also, I wanted to say that while we're asking for the actual rezone is on the reserve apartments, nothing will happen to the reserve apartments for the next 50 to 60 years. They are still economically and physically viable, so nothing will change there. It would just be on the vacant piece. And let's see. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Anyone else here to speak to this? All right, this is in Commission District 8, so I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Myers.
Thank you. I did have a chance to review this a little bit before, but I've been out of town, and so I'm getting it back into my head right now. I do want to just clarify this, so when I explain it to other people in the district, I'll say it correctly. I mean, for you to do this, the single, the development on Dennis Drive, as is, you're building by right in that area. Is that correct, as it's presently zoned? Does it have to be, I mean, you're changing the whole thing. I know about this extra piece.
Yeah, so as is, you can't do anything on the piece on the east because they've exceeded the density
All right,
allowed on
okay,
the western
right.
side.
So
So right
that's-
now, you can do nothing on
So,
this property.
so we're canceling that approach, which makes sense because of the looking at this as a town center and more density. So that was made in a sort of future land use environment than is different than today. And my understanding is that this is something that the planning department is supportive of. rezoning this for the RM2, correct? And I'm seeing a nod over there. The other thing is that road is going all the way through to the end of International Drive. I think you had said around, so it's you'll be able to go all the way through there. I will point out that when you come out onto Barnett Shoals, there's really not an opportunity for a left-hand turn there. And I would hope that we would make that really clear with the signage, because it's so close to the entrance to Publix that is right there, that making a left turn seems like it would be quite dangerous in that area there. That's just something to, I'll follow up and think about whether or not that is, although I cross there on my bike sometimes too. So there are times of the day when it's not that crowded. And you were saying that these have to be one bedroom because of the agreement with the developments over on the other side there. That was for rental. If you decide in the future to change this to for owner, can there be a variation for sale? Because that is something I think we discussed briefly.
Yes, yes. If it is not rental, it can be, there's no restriction on.
Right, because you had talked a little bit with me about looking at where the market is in terms of saturation with one bedrooms. So that's a restriction that's for rent at this point. And because it's non-binding, you can make that decision down the line on that. Okay, I will look at it more and think about it, but so far I'm in support of this.
Commissioner Wright?
Thank you. My questions were being answered the more everybody was talking, so I appreciate that. And I'm glad this slides up here. So I need a little help. Bruce, I guess you could help me out with, we're coming down Dennis Street, and which is a blunt dead end right now because there's nothing there. And it's not cold. We're going to bump it out over there so that you can drive behind the new units.
Yes.
Because that's what's happening on the...
That's correct.
Okay.
There'll be a little more circulation spot there at the end, almost like retrofitting it with a pseudo cul-de-sac bulb for fire and emergency access folks to turn around.
Okay.
But that's why it is sort of an odd cul-de-sac. But yes, you're right.
So
You're
that's
oriented.
answering some access issues, and then you're solving another one at the dead end cul-de-sac on International by being able to
Correct.
use that, whether you're cycling, pedestrian, or vehicle.
Right.
And then, to be clear, the 70s development needed the acreage of this new area to happen, and now we're rezoning it so that something more, a better, higher use of that land can be done,
I think that's fair.
of this lake here. I like that. I also like that it's mimicking some of the pros that was brought up for the, what some of us used to know as the YWCO's little soccer field, what people are looking for. And I'm glad that this is still viable as it is. And you had previous maps that would show the International Drive going all the way to Research. I guess that's probably the Wise property. And it looks like there's a road there, but there's not.
The right-of-way dedication is there. The improvement is not.
Okay.
Right, and the topography through there is really prohibitive to actually do road construction, but that was the original plan for International Drive, was to connect through.
And then if something were to happen on those lavender, which is the YWCO, I saw the soccer fields earlier, could that end up being a multi-use path if something was happening on those that would open up on Research, topography-wise, but a road wouldn't work for vehicles?
Just the engineering of that is really tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steep hiking
Yes.
trail. Okay.
Repelling.
I think this is a good project, and as you dig deeper into it, Commissioner Myers, I hope you don't find anything negative.
No,
It looks good so far.
I do have one question. Is there at the end of Dennis Drive, and I think I've discussed this with the developer, but I forget the answer here on this. There is the low-income senior housing at the end of Dennis right now. And there's I guess there's a community garden there, and I would assume this road then would go to the right of that does, what impact that would have? Is there any, have the impacts on that development?
Or if you can actually see the garden in back of, I can't point, from here, but that retirement.
Oh, yeah, I
grass
can see it
building,
right there.
and that grass area behind it is the garden.
Right.
They own all that property behind it, so the road would be on the opposite side. It would be on the Cambridge apartment side.
Okay.
Not on the side of the garden. It would not interfere with the garden at all.
Okay,
And like I said, the apartments or the retirement folks own all of that wooded area behind it. It's not.
behind the garden,
Behind the garden.
yes.
All right,
Okay,
any
thank you.
further questions about this? All right, Bruce, we really appreciate it. We're going to move on to our old and new business. If anybody needs a break at 8:15, we'll take one then.
I articulated my question wrong about the 31, 05 Barnett Shoals. Can I email it to you?
Yeah, please.
We breaking?
At 8:15.
We coming back at 8:15?
No. If we need a break at 8:15, we will
Okay.
take one then.
Oh. We're not taking a break now?
No.
Sorry, I
No.
got confused.
I did too.
Carol just split.
All right, so we have, of course, about a dozen items of new business lined up, 11, 18 through 28. And so there's a public input opportunity associated with new business, as there was with consent. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak to any of those items of new business?
Again, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, again, my name is Willie Green, 280 Commerce Boulevard. I'm speaking on agenda item number 28, dealing with the the Clarke County School District Youth Development Initiative, and I'm assuming that's the ARPA funding. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I just wanted to ask that my proposal be put on the August 6th agenda to deal with the youth development as well. ARPA still has $3.2 million available, I believe. If you look at my proposal, it's a partnership with the Clarke County Sheriff Department, which we have support here now. And the goal is to give these kids and these youth another alternative to dealing with gang prevention and youth violence. As my proposal lays out, year-round programs after school as well as summer. We would do multiple sports events, basketball, volleyball. Those are the things I'm already doing out at the facility. What I'm asking for is funding so I can be able to serve the underprivileged and the underserved community. Right now, my facility is being used by people from Oconee, North Oconee, Athens Academy, Athens Christian, and unfortunately, I'm not able to serve the kids that really needs it, and which is our Athens community and the youth in our community. I'm working with a number of other nonprofit organizations. My expertise is sports. I know there's concerns with a number of commissioners that the kids need something other than sports. We are working with other nonprofit organizations to provide academic assistance, provide some type of mentoring. The sheriff and the deputies will be used as my coaches in order to build that relationship and that trust back with the law enforcement and the low-income and minority community. Again, Mr. Mayor, I've been supporting this community for over 30 years out of my own pocket. All I'm asking the commissioners is to approve me for the funding so I can get started. We're ready to go. If I'm approved at your agenda hearing in August, I'll be ready to go January the 1st with programs after school starting January the 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Is there anyone else here to speak to any item of new business? All right, we're going to go ahead and move to discussion. Item 18 concerns a good problem to have, and that is that we have been collecting significantly more SPLOST money every month than we had been when we set up the programs for SPLOST and TSPLOST that are currently underway. And so you see a number of projects that we're able to kind of move closer in time to where we're sitting right now, rather than kind of those further out years. So any question about this item?
But not consent.
Commissioner Fisher?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna ask one question. I never asked this before, I don't think. When we collect our SPLOST dollars, is it pay as we go, or do we have to collect all the funds? Do we have to collect all the funds first?
It's a good question. I'll give you a bit of a start, and then Manager Jones may want to pipe in too. One of the things that we are able to do and that we have done is we've bond financed some projects. The Classic Center is a good example. So we've not collected every penny for that project, and communities can do that for part or the entirety of a SPLOST package. Other than that bond financing, though, generally you have to have the pennies kind of in hand in order to get a project off the ground. Now, the reality is that, even though you lay out a schedule with, good information and engineering knowledge and cost figures, there are some times when projects lag a little bit behind what you initially would have hoped your schedule to have been. And so that gives you a little bit of flux to move some of those pennies around. And of course, our current SPLOST program, like our prior one, is a dollar figure pegged SPLOST program. So we're going to collect a certain amount of money rather than run it for a certain number of years. And the reality is that given that we're collecting more dollars every month, it's going to be about a 10-year package rather than about a 12-year package.
Thank you, Mayor.
Anything further? That's it. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Item 19 is TSPLOST 2023 Project Management and Staff Augmentation Services. It's a contract change order with Jacobs, who's our program administrator.
I have some questions, but I'll email them to Manager Jones, about just
I
some
was
reasoning
going to need more
behind
time. Not consent, but
right.
I'll get with staff.
Not consent, but please, and, regarding this or any of the items, if you have some questions that may be complex or you need to still form, send those to Manager Jones, and we'll get responses for you well ahead of the voting meeting. All right, item 20 is the identified priority list for the East Downtown TAD from that advisory committee. Commissioner Taylor?
I read over it just now. But the last meeting that we had, I knew that goal one for housing was apartments. And I thought the last time we talked about this, I asked that home ownership, like that we would approve it, but that home ownership would be top priority, not apartments, because it's not. So how would that work?
And Manager Jones, I know this is coming from an outside body, so.
Yeah.
After the work session, y'all all brought up good points, and I think we envisioned the list, that we're going to create every list, by the way, with all TADs, so this is setting a precedent, if you will, that we envision the list being used as a guide, more so as, here's what you got to do first, here's what you got to do second, and then allowing the commission some flexibility from that list to make some decisions.
Okay.
So we might have a commission to find out.
So you're not fixed into
Yeah.
the first thing that you see there on the page being the first thing we've got to do.
This is my boyfriend. We're not married, so y'all understand.
Keep your consent.
Maybe not even your
We'll keep
boyfriend.
it flexible.
Maybe just somebody who wants your digits.
Let's keep it flexible.
Commissioner Thornton.
On the same vein of housing, I think it, and I brought it up at the agenda setting when we were planning, and I think it specifies the Athens, housing partners that we have, EADC, Land Trust. And since we have new information, I would like to suggest that we add other housing partners such as NACA to that list. So it's not just only those three, but other. You don't even have to say NACA, you could just say other. Commissioner Taylor, I had not talked to you about it, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
And so again, I guess I would suggest that since this is sort of like general guidance, not specific guidance, we kind of take that under advisement, knowing that this isn't allocating any funds to anybody.
But now, when you say we're going to take it under advisement, does that mean that as we move forward, the committee could consider something else if it's not, because the only reason why I'm bringing that up, because it's spelled out, the three. It says the three local things. So
It says such as but not limited to, so it certainly is open up.
But it says Athens.
Well, and just remember, in terms of anybody's use of TAD funds, unless we're talking about a piece of public infrastructure project that we would initiate, somebody is going to have to come to us. So this wouldn't eliminate anybody coming to us if they were in that TAD zone and they wanted to use TAD dollars for a defined purpose.
So could we just take out the word Athens? We can't do nothing today.
We wouldn't be doing anything today, but what you'd want to do is a commission-defined option that maybe finesses or
Okay.
expands that language.
All right, we'll work on that. Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right, item 21 is a legislative review committee report regarding a voluntary residential traffic management program. And I do want to make the point before I turn it over to Commissioner Myers that this doesn't eliminate the tiered program that's prioritized by need that is already in place. This just adds one other layer if a neighborhood would wish to buy in. So I'm going to turn that to you with that caveat.
Oh, yes. Yeah, in fact, that's the most important thing that you are mentioning here, that this is, and I believe that's right in the executive summary, that this is a complementary program, but I would call it secondary to the primary program, which is a residential traffic management program that is staff-initiated and that government-funded with a focus on equity and safety in there. So this is voluntary for neighborhoods to use that are able to put forward a project and self-fund it. And the details are all in here. We spent a lot of time tweaking this to make it the best possible policy. It started with we have a self-funded sidewalk program that is rarely used. This is an additional one. This might be more affordable for neighborhoods, I'm not sure, but it is here for us to share with neighborhoods once it gets passed. And, I'm open for any questions, or y'all can just read this carefully.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I've gotten several emails from my constituents. It's probably going to be something I'm not going to support for a couple of reasons. When you talk about self-funding, and we talk about equity, the communities that are affluent can do this if they want to do it, possible. Then the community that's not, although they could be part of the tier program, they can't get the same type of traffic calming. Secondly, my concern is if a community put down traffic calming in their areas, let's say speed bumps, and something happened to a person's car, and they say, well, whose responsibility is it Athens Clarke County government, or is that community's responsibility to fix whatever needs to be fixed, or somebody's car get damaged or something happen along those lines? So do we want to put that responsibility, if that's the case, for the community, do we want to put that responsibility on that community? So I would caution my colleagues to really think this through about self-funding traffic calming in neighborhoods. I just think that they pay taxes, and they expect for us to do those type of things by the tax dollars that we collect. So, again, it's going to be something that I'm not going to support moving forward. So,
In terms of just the engineering component of this question, I do want to make the point that all that engineering approval would still flow through Transportation and Public Works, and so they would still only forward to the commission something that sort of met standards for kind of safe roadway management. Did I capture that correctly, Manager Jones?
You did. In addition to that, we are doing that because ultimately we are going to own it and maintain it.
so if something happens, it would be our responsibility. Say if there's a lawsuit.
Yes, sir.
So the lawsuit would be filed against Athens Clarke County government?
Yes, sir. We would own the traffic control device, and that's why we would want it built and constructed to our standard.
Understand?
Yes, sir.
But if somebody else paying for it though, I want to be clear with this now. So if I'm spending my own money to construct something and something happens, you're saying that we would be on the hook for it based on the guidelines and stuff that we put together?
Yes. And also, prior to even approving, before it even came to the mayor and commission, our traffic engineering staff would vet it for safety purposes, right? So it's got to pass the warrants, as we call them. So we wouldn't even recommend something that we would normally not put on the road ourselves.
Understand?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Wright, and I'll circle back.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on that from being on the committee, that it does have to be warranted, it does have to be appropriate, it does have to be safe, and it is installed in the same way by the same contracting professionals. It's not like a neighborhood gets together and puts in a traffic circle. So, but the other part is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I remembered that while we have a list and we're waiting for funding priority to go down the list, if a neighborhood funds it themselves, they go off the list. And somebody who doesn't have funding is then moving up. So it actually creates an opportunity for the general funding, or the funding priorities that we're looking for neighborhood calming. I got that, did I get that right, Commissioner?
Yeah.
Let me get Commissioner Davenport, and I'll circle back.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'll be supporting this. I think this is it's a good way for those, and I get the concerns for equity, but this is a great way for those who have like those neighborhoods or those pockets, streets, who have like that small minor, hey, I need to get this fixed, and I'm number 28 on the list. You know, my neighborhood really wants this done. We got a neighborhood association or HOA, well, not HOA, but we got some funds together. Let's get this taken out the way so the other neighborhoods that are on the list will move up to get done by the city, that will be paid for by all taxpayer dollars. But yeah, this is just another alternative for those neighborhoods who are really want to get something done now.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to kind of follow up at hearing Commissioner Fisher's concerns, and I think if I was just kind of seeing this high level, I'd probably share them. But having dug into this for I don't even know how many months at the committee, I think the main thing I want to underscore, and others spoke to it too, is that this really isn't the main program. The main program is the one that we already passed months ago and that we have funding for, and that is going to be most of the streets. Somebody mentioned the sidewalk program. There's only one voluntary sidewalk so far that's been built, and it was actually in District 6. And it was a neighborhood that was an HOA neighborhood built by a developer who never completed the sidewalk along Cleveland Road. And so they got their HOA together and they completed that connecting sidewalk. Once they built it, with the consultation of our professional staff and to the standards of our staff, it's now county infrastructure that the county has to maintain. They just were able to get that done years before it would have been paid for by, like, say, our sidewalk gap program. So I think similarly, we've got a list, if you all recall, when we passed the residential traffic management program, of over 200 streets right now that are warranted, and we have nowhere near enough funding to get through that, probably even in a decade. And so this would allow us to shorten that list without in any way skipping over the ones that we've identified as top priority with our tax dollars. And this might actually go back to when we were talking about pre-designating funds for TSPLOST, that we might want to make sure we're funding that program in TSPLOST.
Commissioner Myers, anything else before we move on to
Yeah,
smoking?
just one more point on that in terms of equity detail. I remember us in committee talking to staff who would be involved with this to find out how much time it would be involved for this program, if it would take away time from those the main program. And they assured us that they gave us some hours. I don't know what it was, but it was pretty minimal. They felt it was a minimal involvement on their part. So that also reassured me that we wouldn't have this opt-in for wealthier neighborhoods that would take up our staff time as well. And that was comforting to hear.
All right, moving on to smoking. So we have another legislative review committee report. that updates our smoking ordinance to include vaping, which has been under discussion for quite some time. So I'll begin that with Commissioner Myers as well.
Yeah, this was a follow-up. If you remember, a year ago, 6 months ago, time goes by so fast here on the commission, we added in vaping to our smoking ordinance. And at that time, we had the American Heart Association who spoke with us. They pointed out at that point that we were not an official American Heart Association smoke-free city, and laid out for us what would be involved. At that point, I think it was last summer, we said, hey, we want to just go ahead and pass the vaping now, so we don't have to, delay this further. Well, now, we got back to it. We reviewed it as a group. What is being requested in here is the minimal needed, the minimal change in the ordinance, and I believe it's the requirement that employee workrooms and banquet rooms, private back rooms, are smoke-free as well. And that would give us the status by the American Heart Association. And if they're listening, correct me if I'm wrong, send me an email. But anyway, that is my understanding of what we're doing right now.
Any questions about that? Commissioner Houle?
I do just want to underscore that the vaping, because I think this is probably just copy-pasted from a previous agenda item, but if you look at the summary on our agenda report, it says it's about the vaping products, and that's already been done. That's not what this is about. Yeah, this is just about changing where it applies after already having done that.
Can we put this on consent?
Yeah.
All right.
Finally, a consent item.
Nice, I knew it would happen.
Dang.
All right, moving on to a Government Operations Committee report. Sing us your dirt road blues, Commissioner Davenport.
Yes. So thank everybody who was involved with the GOC and our dirt road policy. Pretty straightforward. I'm very proud of Athens to say that we only have about 3.2 miles of dirt road for the size of our community. That is impressive. So thank our Transportation Public Works and the likes for that. So basically we have, if you see in the agenda packet, we have pretty much, and I'm trying to pull it up, 27 roads with a total of $14 million plus. What's not included is like sidewalk, stormwater, drainage and stuff like that, but just basic paving and what's not included is right of way. But we do have $200,000 available. I really would like to get the first two out of the way, so I'll be discussing that, ARPA funds, using ARPA funds to get number 1 and 2 out the way. But hopefully this will go on consent.
And we do have some existing capital funds that have been sort of waiting for this, so excited about that. Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the homeowners or property owners along these dirt roads must agree that they want it to be paved.
100%.
Before it goes forward. It's not like we're just going to swoop in there and pave the road because it's on this list, but.
Commissioner Taylor?
I would just like to give a shout out to Head Street, your number 10. Call me, text me, email me. We did it.
Commissioner Culpepper?
Should we don't have to say anything right now about adding ARPA funds to this.
No, that would be a separate act.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is just about the policy. Of course, we've got some existing capital funds out there, and then, of course, we have this prospect we talked about earlier of adding some funds to this pot. Okay to put the policy on consent?
Yes.
All right, beautiful. All right. Shamika, 23 goes to consent. Everybody okay with forging ahead? Okay. All right, 24, of course, we discussed earlier, and so kudos to Commissioners Taylor and Myers for chairing the Business Development Workforce Support Task Force. They have a report, and what I'd certainly recommend from the co-chairs is that we get a commission-defined option that puts some numbers and funding activities in place to kind of well ahead of our voting meeting. We, of course, have 2 full weeks, so that's nice.
Yes.
Anything further on that?
No, I would just like to, say that I'm eager to work with Commissioner Taylor to advance this sooner rather than later so we can not think about it the last few days and get it to everyone beforehand, and if possible, to combine this with the chamber proposal so that we could make it a 1, 2, 3 and get through that in August.
And I do want to keep reiterating about trying to combine with the chamber, especially those organizations that Commissioner Myers and I just talked about. So, I don't be stuttering when I have to vote next month.
We're going to keep some smooth diction happening in this room, my friends.
I have a question.
Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, I just want to make sense of what we will actually be approving. Because I see this agenda item, but then the thing that Commissioner Myers gave us that mapped out dollar amounts isn't in here. So that would come
be a
subsequently if we
CDO.
approve this, or that would be a commission-defined option with
Yeah,
this?
CDO with this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I'm working with Commissioner Taylor and the mayor and the attorney to make sure we do this in the proper procedural way.
Okay. So if we approve the CDO that would include that, there would be no further action to take except for, I guess, voting on the execution of contracts in the future, or would that all be done too?
Attorney Drake, if there were some designated providers of services that were in a CDO, would the specific contract language come back to the body?
We've just been naming the services and what they're going to be doing, so we haven't been bringing the contracts
So that's all
back.
been handled on the staff and attorney's office
Yeah.
level?
Okay. So essentially, this is it. We'd be done with it in August, all of it. Okay, thanks.
Good man. Okay, got two items from the Office of Operational Analysis. 25 is the periodic audit of the Economic Development Department. Auditor Hassemer, I don't know if you want to kind of summarize this, and of course, we have two committee members here as well.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The periodic audit of the Economic Development Department is the first audit since the inception of that department in its current form, now going on just over a decade. So staff took a look at a moment in time, its financials, performance, and compliance, as well as any internal controls, and you have that summary in front of you. Ultimately, we found the department to be in good standing, operating at a satisfactory level, and we found 3 items of interest that we provided with recommendations. And the manager's office and department have provided their responses as well, so.
Committee members, anything else?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay, all right, and 26 is, of course, the work plan for FY '25.
Yes, thank you again. Continuing sort of our progress and process from FY '24, we anticipate conducting another 2 periodic audits. These are a little bit larger in size from the 2 that we've done this past fiscal year. You'll see those outlined in the work plan itself. In addition to that, we will also be following up with 2 of our previous audits from last past year. We will take on a special project of a smaller nature and look to try and increase the coordination and sort of the attention given to the work plan going into FY '26. So all of that combined sort of outlines our FY '25 work plan that we'll be looking for your approval, and once granted, we'll go ahead and get started and get to work on that.
No, just, the audit committee will be meeting this Thursday morning at 10:30, so we'll meet Thursday.
Commissioner Houle?
Thank you. And this is actually about the previous agenda item, but I just kind of want to, I wanted to ask about in this report, there are some findings that your office, Mr. Hassemer, found that staff said they partially agree, in one case they disagree strongly. So when, if at all, would we pick up the conversation as a body around kind of the differing opinions of the folks who answer directly to us? Like, is this our one chance to do that, or are we going to kind of kick that discrepancy of opinion to a work session or a retreat? You know, when do we follow through on that?
Certainly, one option, I think, is the retreat. You know, part of what we do there is refine our strategic plan, and kind of we're in the midst of saying, you know, we really want a better streamlined and focused strategic plan, so that may be a viable opportunity. You know, I'd certainly be interested in hearing from Auditor Hassemer and Manager Jones if they see any other chances here.
Certainly, Mayor. What I can add too, Commissioner, is that, and the audit committee sort of echoed this as well during the conversations, it's healthy to have disagreement, obviously, as part of any audit. We're all working towards the same goal, and as long as it remains constructive and, we can outline our opinions in a professional manner, it's not going to be a surprise to see future audits in which there is disagreement from the department or management. I would say, though, that our goal and certainly our mission as a department is to present you as the commission with facts. And this is what we saw. Regardless of the response from the department or even management, we're presenting to you what we observed. I would say certainly we will continue to work with management. I think, the majority of the time, that's all it will take is for us to have a discussion with management as well as the department on how best to go about, finding a common ground, if any. In areas where you as a commission feel passionately, though, that there should be a certain direction given, that is certainly up to you to relay that, I think, to management and for you all to have that discussion as well, so. I totally agree, and, specifically with the fact that if there is not disagreement, I would argue that the auditor's office wouldn't be doing their job. In the same breath, we have passionate employees, so, if the auditor's pointing something out, we want to allow our employees to say what they want and defend themselves. At the end of the day, we've come to an agreement that, we're gonna work together. The employees' feelings are valid, and at the end of the day, there are some pieces of the audit that they agree to, so it's not like they've totally disagreed. And to your point, Gavin, there will be future disagreements as well. So that doesn't mean that our folks are always going to take on exactly what the auditors have said, but they will certainly take pieces of it, and then we'll come back to the auditor to see if that suffices. So I think this is something that we'd like to work out amongst ourselves, if we could, and if it were something related to malicious intent, as far as stealing money, I think that's when I would see the mayor and commission stepping in. But when it comes to do I need to work virtually or in the somewhere in the office, I think that's really an administrative thing.
Following that, Commissioner Houle.
Yeah, I guess I just want to ask to keep it off consent because I kind of want to better understand what would happen here. I do think it's important for this body to take seriously that, auditor's office works on something, manager's office agrees. It's easy to just assume it's going to happen. We have a great staff that makes sure things happen. But when they don't agree, I think the onus is kind of on us to have it be a conscious decision on whether it does or does not proceed, or at least that we're informed about what is or isn't. And so I hear you, Manager Jones, that you'd like to work it out with the auditor's office on your own, and I don't think we need to get into micromanaging every element of a proposal's of a report's recommendations exactly. But I think we need to at least clearly understand when we're going to hear an update on what did or did not happen. And I would hate for us to kind of, now that we've done a lot with the auditor's office in a short amount of time, and we're seeing a lot of work turned out, and I'd like to have us set up kind of a series of protocols here at the outset of things where it becomes kind of normal practice for us to have a clear idea of how we move forward when there is disagreement, so that it doesn't just sort of sit on a shelf and be ignored by virtue of us not talking about it.
And I think, Commissioner, kind of before I turn to Commissioner Myers, it might be helpful to hear from Auditor Hassemer as a process question, kind of what the pursuit of follow-up activity will be looking like in the office generally. So you may want to speak to that just as a concept.
Absolutely, and that's something that we obviously are looking to instill going forward now that we've got 1 year, fiscal year of audits under our belt. As part of this next agenda item with the FY25 plan, we are planning to go back, for example, to the tax assessor that was completed earlier this year. Economic development will also be on the FY25 plan. Now, basically what we state is that within a year's time, we plan to reach out to both of those or any of those entities that we've audited for an update. That includes us either having a conversation, going to the office, observing for our own eyes what's been done and hasn't been done, and then getting back to you all. It wouldn't necessarily be in the form of an agenda item for approval, but more of a memo that we would get out to the commission, updating you on the status, and I certainly keeping it at the forefront. And that would be in conjunction with management and the department as well. We wouldn't do it blindly. So that will
take place within a year's time, whether it's a year from now or it could be 6 months from now. It sort of depends on our schedule, but also the level of severity may be associated with one of the recommendations. If it's something that we feel is imperative that needs to happen more so than later on, we'll certainly try to work with them and get that follow-up within a timely manner as well, as directed also by the audit committee. So,
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, I was just actually going to bring up the same point, and in fact, in the work plan for next year, the first item is previous audit status updates for the tax assessor and the economic development. I would also hope if there is something of urgence that we do see in a report, that we bring it up in discussion here in City Hall for a transparent airing of differences and perhaps discussion, as we can learn from that as well. But hopefully this follow-up, which is something we added in terms of allowing time in the audit process.
Commissioner Wright?
Yeah, I wanted to add a little bit to this and just remind everybody that we're just accepting the report. We're not approving it. I think it's good for all of us to be familiar with these reports, because I think that when staff uses that information, whether it's a budget request or an agenda item, just like you list which objective or goal it matches, there's also the ability to say, as noted in such and such audit report, specifically in this one where you're listing something about the board's authorities and commission compliance. Well, there's information there that I would think would be relevant for government operations when they work on, when these topics start colliding, or as the mayor would say, the weaving of the topics together. Anyway, but it's up to all of us to be able to know what's in there to use it and bring it forward as needed.
Thank you. And, I think it's healthy that our folks feel like they can respond and say, we disagree, right? So I don't want to create a culture of where they don't feel safe.
All right. Next item, 27, is the construction loan for landfill phases 2A and 2B. Questions about this?
There's still some TBD, but also I have a question. Just wordsmithing, the landfill is not expected to reach capacity by spring 2025. There's just one sale that's going to be reaching capacity. So it just when other people read it, some people thought like, oh no, I thought we just bought some land. But yeah, it's wordsmithing.
No, that's a helpful clarification. I appreciate that, Commissioner.
Yikes.
Anything else about this one? I think we've got a little bit of kind of finalization of some language or numbers that need to be in there.
They got to find a known.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we can't put it on consent just as a result of that. All right, last item of new business is the Clarke County School District Youth Development Initiative. Discussed this a little bit earlier, obviously in the context of ARPA, sort of reflecting up until now. One of the things I would observe, while I would like to get additional information out of the Clarke County School District, is that in the era prior to this partnership, I would say that youth sports were a little bit like that row of shrubs that are sometimes between your property and a neighbor's property, where there's question, well, who's taking care of those shrubs? Are those my shrubs or are they my neighbor's shrubs? Because the reality was that for many years, there was some spottiness around availability of youth programming, especially in that later elementary and middle school frame. You just look to some neighboring communities like Connie County, and they have a sort of multi-year public volleyball program, for example, and that had been lacking here. So while I do hope we get some more data, I do see great value in continuing this partnership because there had been lots of questions. Well, is this a leisure services responsibility or is this a school district responsibility? And fortunately, we had been able to partner to just assure that there was comprehensive availability of some of these things where there had just been gaps. So do want to make that point, but I want to turn it over for any other questions or comments as well. Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, again, Mayor, I would like to see some academic data, attendance data, and what impact that these sports program had on these young people moving forward. I'm inclined right now not to support this, but again, I keep an open mind about this. But I just want to see some more stuff. And again, to make sure that whatever funding they're going to put forward, that they are going to put that funding forward. So if we can get that information, Manager Jones, that would be helpful for me.
I'll call Superintendent this week.
Commissioner Link?
Yeah, I'd like to get some information from the school district on what other programs besides sports they have. You know, do they have arts programs? Do they have STEAM programs, STEM programs, you know, science, environmental education, those kind of programs? Because I feel like it is discriminatory to just focus on sports. And, you know, I'd like to see some data as to outcomes regarding kids who are in sports versus kids who are engaged in those other alternative, more creative and brain-oriented topics. You know, I'd love to see these kids using their brains rather than just kicking the ball around.
Commissioner Thornton?
I would like to see how much of their ARPA funds they still have left, and how they've used it. And I'd also like to take a look at their fund balance. We caught a lot of heat during our budget because of our millage rate and taxes. So let's see what they have in their fund balance that justify the property taxes that residents pay.
Commissioner Houle?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm curious, when we had all this discussion about clawback stuff, what clawback would look like on this if it's not following through, or does it just, you know, can the school district just kind of do it this whatever they want essentially because it's such a broad definition? But, you know, echoing concerns raised by colleagues, you know, it's not clear to me, maybe I'm misreading it, but it's not clear to me when I read through this that the 50%, I don't get how that's working. Like, we're paying for half of what? So are we just paying, are there existing school district programs, for example, that we're now footing half the bill of? Or is this a new program where they're paying for what they're already paying for, and we're just paying for half of the program because we're doubling its size? And then, you know, yeah, we're paying for an expansion, but it's not really splitting the cost of that expansion. Or is this us doing an entirely new thing and splitting the cost 50-50 with the school district? So I'd really like to understand that, among other things that have been raised up here. And even if the answers to that are all quite good, I still have to digest my kind of lingering concern or disappointment that, like, this was initially focused on being violence prevention with numerous specific ideas put forward that don't seem to be a part of this. Not that they were necessarily going to have to be, but if they're not a part of this, they're not a part of anything we do. And at the end of the day, I wonder if it is the best use of our funds, rather than just putting it towards infrastructure, if we're not really doing something transformative and different with regard to violence prevention. Something like the street level gang outreach program or other stuff we've talked about. And I just want to say, since, you know, sometimes our words carry more weight than we realize, I'd like to respectfully disagree with Commissioner Link that sports don't inherently include lots of brain activity. I've done plenty of sporting in my past, and I know plenty of others who have as well. I'm sure that was not meant to be taken that way, but yeah, there's plenty of cerebral activity in any given sport for sure.
I would kind of want to get some more detailed information for you, Commissioner Houle, but I can say generally that before this partnership was in place, there were some sports where neither the school district nor the unified government kind of offered programming in this age range. And then there were some sports where only some elementary schools, but not all, provided access to that sport. And so this allowed kind of all our complement of elementary schools to have all 6 of these sports available to their students in middle schools as well. And exactly kind of what the funding prospects looked like prior to this versus now, that's where I would need some more information.
So year one, it was $155,000 our share, and that was because there was the initial investment in equipment. So it's been reduced now because we're just, you know, carry on programming. So it went from 155 now to 110 as far as our share of 50%.
total cost.
Okay, but we're talking about over $3 million. in total.
Oh, no, this agenda item is just that elementary and middle sports program, not that broader categorical area.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful to understand. So this is really, there's still that 3.1 million left over.
That's exactly
and we're
right,
not
yes.
committing that.
I apologize for leading to misimpression. So this is just that kind of micro component of the 4th through 8th grade sports programming that we started a couple of years ago in conjunction with the district, and this would just be continuing that. But this doesn't touch that other approximately $3 million.
Okay, well then I will modify what I was saying before. I don't know if we need that much info. I feel much more comfortable with that. I don't know if other colleagues do too, but I'm seeing some laughter here. But because we also have talked tonight about how we need to figure this out ASAP, I think a lot of our questions remain super relevant for how we're going to use the remainder of that money. Since we don't have an agenda item on the table this coming cycle, if we're doing anything with the school district, we really need to understand the stuff from them, I think, really soon. So,
Commissioner Myers?
Yeah, 2 points on this one. There was a question before, I think from my colleague here to my right, about ongoing funding for projects. Is the assumption here that this is going to be a cost that will be, in part of our general budget going forward and our contribution? And that probably ties into some of those other questions about the money that the school district has or so forth. Was this just to get it going, and then the school district will take over the expenses? If that's the case, should we be, weaning the amount given so that their budget can take over? So I do have that question about the ongoing funding of this. Likewise, when we talk about the violence prevention part of the youth development, I do hope we will somehow not forget that. I do want to, when Commissioner Fisher and I meet with the Boys and Girls Club with the Delinquency Prevention Initiative, talk a little bit about where that's going with, in terms of the immediate violence, whether or not it's having violence, forget the term now, preventive people on the ground who go and embrace people who are in violent situations, versus the long-term strategies for long-term prevention. So that's still something to consider as we're going forward.
And just Commissioner Myers, obviously, while this will always be the purview of this body writ large, my hope would be that with general funds, following the conclusion of calendar 2026, that this would continue to be a partnership, because I do believe we're able to do more together than leisure services or the district could do on their own.
Is that something, though, that could be then, the money would be allocated to the leisure services department so that we have it, represented that way? Because that's a different way of thinking about it. I mean, we're thinking about it as a leisure services contribution to this program. And that would make sense to me rather than a standalone program, just something to think about.
No, absolutely. And maybe we could kind of talk later about whether, should this continue kind of into subsequent years, if it just be directed that way in our annual budget. Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm going to push back a little bit on that. I think our taxpayer will have some angst about if we put the school district as part of our budget. And they got a budget, and they got a high millage rate. I don't think that's a slope that we need to be going down. I wouldn't. We should not have them in our general budget at all. I mean, I like the partnership, but I don't think the school district should be a part of our general budget. That's not something that I'm going to stomach. I'm not going to be able to stomach that at all. I just can't. I mean. So my colleagues, Commissioner Thornton's on point. Their fund balance is huge. They got a huge fund balance. I mean, I work there, so I understand what that fund balance means. So for us to say, they might be a part of our budget, I don't think that's a slope that we want to go down in the future. So, for my 2 cents.
Lots of decisions yet to be made. All right, entertain a motion that we enter executive session for the purposes earlier stated after a break.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll go ahead and take a 5-minute break, and then we'll go ahead and enter executive session for those two items.